Chapter 227, Dangerous Promise. As soon as Li Chenmo finished speaking, he turned his wife around suddenly and kissed her deeply. After holding back for a long time, he finally tasted his wife's sweet lips. Satisfied yet dissatisfied, he pried her teeth open and deepened the kiss. Lu Jiyu was caught off guard by her husband's sudden affection and became dizzy from the kiss. The kiss was gentle yet intense, leaving her a little overwhelmed. After being kissed for a while, she felt her husband slow down his movements as if coaxing her to return his kiss. Li Chenmo looked at his wife's misty eyes, raised the corners of his lips, and whispered hoarsely while their lips were still touching each other, "Wife, close your eyes." Feeling his warm breaths brushing her lips, Lu Jiyu closed her eyes obediently and felt her husband's lips covering hers again. After his patient coaxing, she kissed him back. Finally getting what he wanted, he pulled her closer, as if to integrate her into his body and become one with her. As the kiss deepened, Lu Jiyu's palms on her husband's chest clenched tightly as she heard the sound of their tongues intertwining together with the sound of her husband's heavy breathing. She could even hear the ambiguous sound of their wet lips sucking each other. Her face was flushed due to excitement and embarrassment from the sounds they were making, while her toes curled shyly. When Li Chenmo parted their lips, he looked at his wife's red and swollen lips and watery eyes with satisfaction. He rubbed her lips with his thumb gently and said in a hoarse voice, 6 months. I will wait for you for another 6 months. Lu Jiyu's mind is blank now, and she doesn't understand what her husband is talking about or notices his dangerous promise. She didn't come back to her senses until she was led by her husband and sat on a chair. She held her cheek, feeling how hot her skin was. Before she recovered from the kiss, Li Chenmo had already placed a bowl of soup in front of her and said calmly, "Wife, drink some soup first." Lu Jiyu raised her head and looked at her calm husband with a pout. As the culprit, how could he remain so calm when her heart was beating so fast? She still felt shy, so she lowered her head and started eating. Li Chenmo looked at his wife and smiled. When he lowered his head, he looked at his body and sighed. It seemed that he needed to take another cold shower before leaving this space with his wife. After dinner, Li Chenmo took a cold shower to calm down, while Lu Jiyu was washing the dishes. When he finally came out, Lu Jiyu had already changed her clothes and was waiting for him. She took his hand and led the two of them out of her space. When they emerged into the bedroom, the sun had just set, tinting the sky with beautiful red and orange hues. "Husband, I have prepared some food for father in the kitchen. I put it in the bamboo basket," Lu Jiyu said and went to the cabinet to get some money. Li Chenmo went to the kitchen, took the bamboo basket, and carried it to the front yard. After Lu Jiyu locked the door, she saw that her husband was already waiting for her. Since they had brought a bamboo basket, they decided to walk instead of riding a bicycle. After locking the door, they walked side by side towards Father Li's house. When they passed Ling Yun's house, they saw him plowing the ground in the front yard. Seeing them, Ling Yun stopped what he was doing and nodded to them. Li Chenmo looked at the soil and said, "If you need fertilizer, just go to the pig pen and get the pig manure." "Thank you, I'll go get it when I finish plowing." Ling Yun did not refuse and accepted happily. After a brief conversation, Li Chenmo nodded to Ling Yun and continued to walk. Lu Jiyu turned to look at Ling Yun again and found that he was also looking at them. She smiled at him, but he nodded to her expressionlessly. Before she could look at Ling Yun again, a palm covered her eyes, and she heard her husband's displeased voice, "Wife, don't look." Lu Jiyu smiled and pulled her husband's hand down. She held his hand and said, "I'm just curious." "Why are you curious about him?" Li Chenmo asked with raised eyebrows. "Well, he seems to be interested in Magia. As her friend, I should understand his situation and report to Magia so that she will not be deceived by his handsome face," Lu Jiyu said with a smile. "So you think he is handsome?" Li Chenmo asked again. Lu Jiyu glanced at her husband and said, "That's not the point. The point is that he seems to be interested in Magia." "Then do you think he's handsome?" he insisted. "He is handsome, but not as handsome as you. My husband is the most handsome man," Lu Jiyu finally said with a smile. After listening to his wife's words, Li Chenmo was finally satisfied and said, "Wife, don't look at other men. I will be jealous." Lu Jiyu thought for a while and said, "Well, I can't guarantee that I won't look at other men at all. After all, I need to go out and meet people. It's impossible for me not to look at other men." Li Chenmo fell silent and said, "Then don't look at other men for too long." Lu Jiyu looked at her husband, squeezed his hands and said seriously, "Husband, my heart is very small and can only accommodate you. Once you occupy the entire place, no one else will be able to enter anymore. I can guarantee you this, so you don't have to worry, I will never have a change of heart. When Li Chenmo heard his wife's words, he was stunned and looked at her in surprise. It took him a full minute to process what she said. When he finally understood what she meant, his eyes lit up and a bright smile appeared on his face. He clasped his fingers and said, "Wife, thank you." "Why do you want to thank me? I should be the ones thanking you. I'm lucky to have you in my life," Lu Jiu said with a smile. The two chatted and walked side by side happily. Because they deliberately didn't walk fast, it took them more than 30 minutes to get to Father Li's house. As soon as they entered the front yard, they heard Li Chengshuan's voice coming from the living room. "Father, when will my third brother come? It's past dinner time and we haven't eaten yet." Li Chenmo pulled Lu Jiu towards the backyard, first put the bamboo basket in the corner of the kitchen, and then went to the living room. When they walked into the living room together, Li Chengshuan looked at their intertwined fingers and said, "Third brother, you should pay attention to your behavior in public. Otherwise, people may report you to the officers." Li Chenmo ignored him and greeted others, "Father, brother, sister-in-law." "Father, brother, sister-in-law." Lu Jiu greeted them and sat down next to her husband. When Li Chengshuan saw that they were ignoring him, he opened his mouth to scold Li Chenmo, but was interrupted by Father Lei. "Have you two eaten?" "Father, we have eaten," Lu Jiu said with a smile. Father Li nodded and said, "I summoned you all today just to ask your opinions on Zhao Siyu's matter." "Father, what's wrong?" Li Chen's asked. Father Li glanced at his second son and said, "The second son has asked his mother-in-law to take care of his wife. As long as the second son gives her lunch and dinner, his mother-in-law agrees." After hearing what Father Li said, Li Chen's nodded and said, "It is reasonable for the second brother to prepare a meal for his mother-in-law. After all, as a son-in-law, he should fulfill his filial piety. What's more, his mother-in-law is helping him." Zhang Dongmei lowered her head and said nothing. Although she disagreed with her husband, she did not contradict his words in front of others. If the second brother occasionally provides meals to his parents-in-law, that is called filial piety, and it is indeed reasonable. But if in order to take care of his wife he needs to give his mother-in-law 2 meals a day, that's unreasonable. As Zhao Siyu's mother, she has some responsibility to take care of her daughter. Sure enough, Father Li added, "The second son's mother-in-law will only go if he gives her 2 meals. Otherwise, she will not go. Moreover, with the second son's current financial situation, it is impossible to fulfill his promise." As soon as everyone heard what Father Li said, they knew that Li Chengshuan actually wanted them to pay for the meal. Everyone fell silent and looked at Li Chengshuan. Sensing their gazes, Li Chengshuan said, "I have no other choice. If I don't agree with my mother-in-law, she won't go to the hospital to take care of Siyu, and I won't be able to go to work. Since you agreed, you should fulfill it yourself. Why did you come to us regarding this matter?" Li Chen's asked. "Do you think if I had other choices, I would come to you for help?" Li Chengshuan asked with displeasure. "If you don't have the ability, you shouldn't make a promise," Li Chen's added. "If I don't agree, my mother-in-law won't agree to help me." Li Chengshuan was a little annoyed, and his voice became louder. Seeing that the two of them were arguing again, Li Chenmo asked, "If we cover the food expenses for you, do you plan to pay our money back?" Li Chengshuan looked at him with a frown and said, "Third brother, how can you say such a thing? As a family, we should help each other and shouldn't calculate so clearly. We are indeed a family, but we have separated our household registrations and are responsible for our own families. I have a wife and will have children of my own in the future. I work hard to make money for them, not for you. If you have no intention of paying me back my money, sorry, I can't lend it to you," Li Chenmo said calmly. When Li Chengshuan heard this, his eyes flashed. According to Li Chenmo's words, he should still have some savings that can be lent to him. As long as he agrees to pay back the money, he can get Li Chenmo's money. Whether he actually returns the money or not is left to the future. After weighing the pros and cons, Li Chengshuan said, "I will definitely return the money to you. As long as you help me this time, I promise to return it to you with interest." Li Chenmo looked at his second brother and understood his plan. He smiled and said, "No interest required. As long as the money can be returned, that is enough." "Third brother, so you agree to help me?" Li Chengshuan asked. Father Li and Li Chen's frowned and looked at Li Chenmo. Although they wanted to help Li Chengshuan, they did not believe what he said. So when they heard that Li Chenmo agreed to lend him money, they couldn't help but worry that Li Chengshuan would cheat him of his money. "Yes," Li Chenmo nodded. Li Chengshuan was excited when he heard his confirmation. but before he could say thanks, he heard Li Chenmo's next words. You just need to write down the IOU, sign your name, and put your thumbprint. When you are done, I will help you. Li Chengxuan was stunned. He knows what an IOU is and the consequences of not fulfilling the promises of the IOU. If he did write the IOU, he would have to pay back the money he borrowed or be sent to jail. Li Chengxuan was hesitant at first, but when he saw everyone was looking at him with a hint of worry, he regained his confidence. They are his family, and if he doesn't pay back the money, his third brother can't possibly send him to jail. So after considering the pros and cons, Li Chengxuan said, Okay, I will write down the IOU. Good, we should invite our uncles as witnesses, so that no one can escape responsibility. Li Chenmo nodded. When Father Li and Li Chen's heard his words, they finally breathed a sigh of relief. As his uncles testified, it was impossible for Li Chengxuan to pretend to be ignorant and refuse to pay back the money. Third brother, is it necessary? It's so late and it's not good to disturb the uncles, Li Chengxuan said with a frown. Either invite the uncles to be witnesses, or the deal is off the table. It's your choice, Li Chenmo said lightly. Li Chengxuan glared at him and said, Since you insist, then I will go invite our uncles as you wish. After speaking, he rushed out to invite the uncles. After Li Chengxuan left, Father Li looked at Li Chenmo and asked, Third son, do you really want to lend your money to your second brother? Father, don't worry, I will lend him food instead of money, Li Chenmo said with a smile. He didn't believe in his second brother's character. If he lent him money, Li Chengxuan might use the money to buy things for the woman he has an affair with, so it's better to lend him some food instead. Father Li believed in his third son's judgment and nodded. While waiting for Li Chengxuan to come back, Lu Jiu leaned on her husband's shoulder, feeling a little sleepy. Seeing her like this, Zhang Dongmei's eyes flickered, and she stared at Lu Jiu's belly for a while. She picked up the teacup to hide her complicated eyes and took a sip of tea. Almost an hour later, Li Chengxuan came back with his uncles. Father Li stood up and said, Eldest brother, second brother, I'm sorry to bother you so late. Third brother, it's okay. As your brothers, this is what we should do, the eldest uncle said and sat down next to Father Li. The second uncle sat on the other side and said nothing, but looked at his nephews, especially Li Chengxuan, with a hint of displeasure. Zhang Dongmei stood up and poured a cup of hot tea for the two of them before returning to her seat. After they took a sip of tea, Li Chenmo said, Eldest uncle, second uncle, I'm sorry to invite you two at this time. I need to trouble you two to become a witness. We have heard from Chengxuan. You can rest assured, we won't be partial to either side and act as a witness, eldest uncle said. Thank you, uncles, Li Chenmo nodded at them. After saying that, he went to his previous room and took out a piece of paper, an ink pad, and a pen from the drawer. Then he returned to the living room and wrote the IOU. When he finished writing the IOU, he signed his name and pressed his thumbprint. He handed the IOU to Li Chengxuan. After he read the IOU, Li Chengxuan said in disbelief, Third brother, this is not what we agreed before. How can you lend me food instead of money and use my house as collateral? Second brother, as long as you pay back the borrowed food, you don't have to worry about losing your house. For my reason, the only thing of value that can be used as collateral is your house. You don't expect me to lend you food just based on your empty promise, right? Li Chenmo raised his eyebrows. Li Chengxuan was choked by his words and couldn't find the words to refute them. He is unwilling to sign this unfair IOU, but if he doesn't sign, he will get nothing. After thinking about the pros and cons for a long time, he finally said, Okay, but I want you to write down the amount of food. No problem, Li Chenmo agreed as that's also what he wanted. I want 20 kilograms of meat, 100 kilograms of coarse grains, 50 kilograms of white rice, 50 kilograms of white flour, 5 kilograms of sugar, 50 eggs, 2 packets of salt, 2 bottles of sesame oil, 10 liters of cooking oil, Li Chengxuan said with a hint of greed in his eyes. When he stated his request, everyone took a breath and looked at him in disbelief. They didn't expect him to ask for so much food. Even if Li Chenmo had money, it would be impossible for him to get this amount of money, because coupons are very rare and would limit his purchasing. Just when everyone thought Li Chenmo would not agree, they saw him writing down the amount of food, making it clear at a glance. After putting down his pen, he said calmly, You need to return the exact amount of food. If you pay less, I will consider you to have violated your promise, and I have the right to confiscate your house. Don't worry, I will pay you back, Li Chengxuan said and signed his name on the IOU. After he pressed his fingerprints, he handed the IOU to Li Chenmo. After checking the signatures and fingerprints, Li Chenmo folded the IOU neatly, hid it in his clothes and said, I'll give you 1/3 tomorrow. You can give it to your mother-in-law first. You can come back in 2 days and take a rest. Since the amount of the food was not small, Li Chengxuan agreed. After solving the problem, Li Chengxuan said, "Father, uncles, it's already very late. I'll take my leave first." After saying that, he left without hesitation. Seeing his back, the eldest uncle and the second uncle both shook their heads. Father Li felt embarrassed by his second son's rude attitude and said, "Brothers, how about staying for a meal?" Seeing that the second uncle wanted to refuse Father Li's invitation due to anger, Lu Jiu said, "Father, I brewed some tonic wine before and brought a jar over for you to try. How about I make some meat dishes to go with the wine?" After hearing her words, the second uncle swallowed his rejection and looked at his brothers. Seeing that the eldest uncle had no intention of leaving, he said, "Third brother, we will stay for a meal." Father Li was relieved when he saw that his brothers were no longer offended by what happened just now. He looked at his daughters-in-law and said, "Then this meal will be left to you too. Father, you can rest assured." After Zhang Dongmei said that, she and Lu Jiu went to the kitchen, while the men stayed in the living room to chat. After entering the kitchen, Zhang Dongmei went to light a fire and boil a pot of water, while Lu Jiu walked to a corner of the kitchen and took out the grains and other items from the bamboo basket. After the fire was lit, Zhang Dongmei noticed the food brought by Lu Jiu. While helping her put the food into cabinets and jars, she said, "Third sister-in-law, you and third brother are the most filial. Eldest sister-in-law, when our mother-in-law fell ill, you and the eldest brother took care of her every day until she passed away. Compared with the filial piety of you and the eldest brother, what my husband and I have done for our father now is nothing," Lu Jiu said. "There is no need to compare between us. I believe father understands in his heart," she added with a smile. Zhang Dongmei was comforted by her words. Because Lu Jiu and Li Chenmo were generous to Father Li, she was worried that Father Li would think that she and Li Chen's were not as filial as the third branch. Although they were filial to Father Li, they did not have as much money and food as the third branch. After storing the food, Lu Jiu started to cook braised pork, fish soup, fried sauerkraut and steamed buns. While she was cooking, Zhang Dongmei helped her wash pots and dishes. So while dinner was being prepared, the pots were cleaned. 30 minutes later, Zhang Dongmei brought the dishes to the living room, and Lu Jiu took out a jar of tonic wine from her space. This tonic wine is made from a variety of medicinal plants and wild ginseng. She brewed this wine for her husband, but since she brewed a lot, she didn't mind taking out a jar to share with her husband's family. When she finally came to the living room holding the tonic wine, Father Li and the others were already waiting for her. When Li Chenmo saw her coming, he stretched out his hand and said, "Wife, thank you for your hard work." "It's nothing," she smiled at him and sat next to him. After everyone sat down, Father Li said, "Eldest brother, second brother, please have a try." The two uncles nodded and picked up a piece of braised pork with their chopsticks. After they took the first bite, Father Li picked up a piece of braised pork and started eating it. After the three elders took a bite, they finally moved their chopsticks. Since both Li Chenmo and Lu Jiu had already eaten, they only drank a bowl of fish soup. Lu Jiu smiled when she saw that they were eating with delight. During the meal, Li Chen's opened the wine jar and poured some wine for Father Li and both uncles. Dinner took longer than usual because of the drinking. An hour later, they finally finished their meal. When Father Li saw off his brothers, Lu Jiu went to the kitchen while Zhang Dongmei washed the dishes. Before leaving the kitchen, Lu Jiu checked the surrounding environment. After confirming that there was no one around, she took out a pack of fruit slices and a can of milk powder from her space. She put a few steamed buns, fruit slices, and milk powder into a small bamboo basket. After that, she took out some steamed buns and put them on the steamer on the stove before leaving the kitchen. She put the bamboo basket near the door and helped Zhang Dongmei wash the dishes. Lu Jiu, who was sitting next to her, said, "Eldest sister-in-law, there are still some buns left. Can you help me bring some back to the children?" Zhang Dongmei nodded and said, "Third sister-in-law, I would like to thank you on behalf of the children." Lu Jiu smiled and nodded. When they finished washing the dishes, the moon rose and lit up the night. After a brief conversation, Li Chen's and Li Chenmo left Father Li's house with their wives. Not long after, the educated youth who lived in Li's house came back. When they saw that Father Li was the only one inside, they breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they didn't come back when Father Li's family was still there. When Li Chengxun came over before, they were resting in their rooms. Hearing him quarreling with Father Li, the educated youth felt uncomfortable, so they found an excuse to go out. Father Li knew they were being polite, so they gave him a face and went out. So when he saw them coming back, Father Li said, "There is fish soup and some steamed buns in the kitchen. Help me finish it to avoid wasting food." After saying that, Father Li went to his bedroom to rest. The educated youths all know that Father Li is an awkward old man, but he has a kind heart. Therefore, they went to the kitchen without thinking too much about Father Li's cold attitude. The warm fish soup is placed on the brazier, and the steamed buns are placed on the steamer above the stove. Opening the steamer, they found more than 15 steamed buns inside. The steamed buns are made with white flour and are very fragrant. Seeing the soft and white buns, the 4 young men swallowed their saliva instantly. They took the bowls and filled them with fish soup. They drank fish soup and ate a steamed bun with relish. Although Father Li told them to finish the food, they did not dare to eat everything. The 4 of them each took a steamed bun and divided the fish soup equally. After eating, they cleaned up the kitchen, washed the dishes, and then went back to their rooms. At the same time, Li Chenmo was holding his wife's soft hand and walking back to his home. He intertwined their fingers together, squeezing them every now and then. Lu Jiu let her husband do whatever he wanted and asked, "Husband, why do you use your second brother's house as a mortgage? The price of food does not cost that much." "My second brother always wants to take advantage of everyone. Between food and a house, he will definitely choose a house. So we use his house as a mortgage and don't have to worry about him not being willing to repay the debt." Li Chenmo rubbed his wife's hand while speaking casually. Lu Jiu nodded after listening to his words. After understanding his intention, she had no objection. After returning home, they washed up and went to bed. Li Chenmo lay on the bed and said, "Wife, let's go to the black market tomorrow to buy some food for my second brother." "Why don't we use the food in my space?" Lu Jiu asked doubtfully. "The food at your space is different from what is sold in state-owned supply stores. If the quantity is small, no one will notice. But my second brother asked for a lot of food. If we use the food in your space, someone may notice the difference. What's more, your food tastes better and has health benefits. It's safer to buy from the black market," said Li Chenmo. Lu Jiu nodded and said, "I didn't think that far ahead, I was careless." "It's all right, you have me." After hearing what her husband said, Lu Jiu smiled and leaned into his embrace. "I have you." Feeling safe, she slowly fell into a dreamless sleep. Hearing his wife's long and gentle breathing, Li Chenmo turned to look at his wife. He came close to her, kissed her forehead, and said softly, "Good night, my dear wife." He hugged her tighter, closed his eyes, and fell asleep with a smile on his face. Li Chenmo woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning the next day. After washing up, he climbed onto the Kang bed, leaned over, and kissed his wife's soft lips. Feeling ticklish, Lu Jiu's eyelashes trembled, and she slowly woke up. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw a pair of deep eyes looking at her affectionately with a hint of a smile. She blinked a few times and realized her lips were being gently bitten by her husband. When she opened her lips to say something, Li Chenmo's eyes flashed and he suddenly deepened the kiss. Before Lu Jiu was fully awake, she was suddenly kissed, making her unable to tell whether she was dreaming or not. 10 minutes later, Li Chenmo finally parted their lips and whispered hoarsely, "Good morning, wife." "Good morning, husband," Lu Jiu said blankly. Li Chenmo pecked her lips again and said, "Go and wash up." "MHMM." After Li Chenmo left the room, Lu Jiu sat on the bed for a while before going to wash up and change clothes. After that, she took out the money from the cabinet and some coupons from the space. After locking the house, she sat on the back seat of the bicycle and hugged her husband's waist. After confirming that his wife was safely seated, Li Chenmo pedaled his bicycle and left the village under the moonlight. Thinking of the fruit slices in her space, Lu Jiu said, "Husband, can we stop by Huzi's place later? I want to sell some snacks." "All right, we will stop by later." Feeling the cold wind blowing against her hand, Lu Jiu moved her hand and moved her hands into her husband's clothes. Although they no longer wear cotton-padded jackets, they still wear at least 2 layers of clothing in early spring. When Li Chenmo felt his wife's soft hands caressing his abdominal muscles, his body tensed and he said, "Wife, be good." Lu Jiu complained about her husband's stinginess, but did not dare to touch his abdominal muscles again. Although his abdominal muscles are not as firm as when he was a soldier, he still has 6 packs and a good figure, so she likes her husband's body very much. Since her husband did not allow her to touch his abdominal muscles, she could only hold his waist honestly. When his wife's hands stopped moving, Li Chenmo breathed a sigh of relief. It's not that he doesn't like her touch, it's that he can't walk in public if he lets her touch him as she pleases. His body responded to her touch almost immediately. As her hand touched his abdomen, he felt his blood rush to his lower abdomen. Unaware of her husband's complicated emotions, Lu Jiu leaned on his back, closed her eyes, and took a nap. 30 minutes later, they arrived at the town and came to a secluded corner of a dark alley. Lu Jiu brought Li Chenmo to her space, changed their clothes, and left the space with a bamboo basket filled with snacks she had prepared before. In addition to fruit slices, she also brought out pookies, empanadas, meat buns, jujube cakes, walnut cakes, mung bean cakes, and butter biscuits. She also took out 10 jars of spicy meat sauce and 10 jars of salty meat sauce. Li Chenmo was carrying a large bamboo basket, while Lu Jiu was carrying a small bamboo basket, which contained 10 jars of wild honey and a small jar of tonic wine. With scarves covering their faces, they walked towards Huzi's place. Li Chenmo knocked on the door and waited for a while before the door was opened by Huzi's assistant. Seeing them, the young man's eyes lit up and he said, "Brother, sister-in-law, please come in." Li Chenmo nodded to him and walked to the room with his wife. After the young man locked the door, he followed them to the inner room. Huzi heard the footsteps and asked, "Beiji, who is coming?" "Boss, it's brother and sister-in-law," Beiji said with a smile. When Huzi heard this, he looked up and smiled. Although he knew a lot of people because of his business, he only called Li Chenmo his brother and Lu Jiu his sister-in-law. Not only because of Lu Jiu's relationship with his cousin, but also because Li Chenmo was his eldest brother's comrade in the army. "Brother, sister-in-law, you are finally willing to come again. Did you bring anything for me today?" Huzi asked with a smile. "We brought some snacks, wild honey, and sauces today," Li Chenmo said as he put the bamboo basket on the table. Huzi helped him take out the things from the bamboo basket and looked at the snacks with wide eyes. Because Lu Jiu sent fewer snacks lately, the wealthy customers have been a little dissatisfied with him recently. Even if he manages to divide the snacks equally to ensure that everyone has a portion, the number of snacks they can get is too small. So when he saw the snacks on the table, he was very happy. Not to mention anything else, the fruit slices alone were enough for him to distribute to those wealthy families. As for wild honey, he will sell it to government and military officials. Seeing the small wine jar, he took a sniff and asked, "Sister-in-law, what is this?" "This is my family's tonic wine. It used several medicinal herbs and 300-year-old wild ginseng to make this small jar," Lu Jiu said with a smile. Huzi and Beiji were stunned by her words. Not to mention medicinal materials, 300-year-old wild ginseng alone is already very rare. As long as it is certified safe by a doctor, they can sell this small jar of tonic wine for hundreds or even thousands of yuan. "Sister-in-law, how much does this tonic wine cost?" Huzi asked, slowly placing the wine jar on the table. Lu Jiu thought for a while and said, 800 yuan. When Huzi heard the price, he took a breath due to shock. He thought Lu Jiu would ask for 500 yuan at most. He didn't expect her appetite to be so big. This wine jar can only hold up to 500 ml of wine. Noticing Huzi's hesitation, Lu Jiu said, "Brother Huzi, I guarantee that my tonic wine is effective. As long as you drink 1 spoonful a day, even chronic diseases can be cured." Huzi was silent after listening to her words. Despite his misgivings, he was willing to believe in the health benefits of her product. Just when he was considering whether to buy tonic wine or not, he heard Lu Jiu's words. "If Brother Huzi is afraid that no one would want to buy the tonic wine, how about you sell it first, and then give me the money after you sell it?" Since she was willing to believe him, Huzi did not refuse and said, "Since my sister-in-law is willing to let me sell it first without paying for the wine, then I will only charge 10% of my fee." Lu Jiu nodded and agreed to his offer. She was confident in the effectiveness of her tonic wine. It will definitely be able to sell for a good price. Huzi calculated the prices of snacks and other items and handed over the money. Lu Jiu earned nearly 2,000 yuan from snacks, sauces, and wild honey alone. After the transaction, Li Chenmo took his wife to another place to buy food. Unlike how they do business with Huzi, Li Chenmo had no intention of bringing his wife with him this time. When he reached a dark corner, he pulled his wife and whispered, "Wife, wait for me here." Lu Jiu frowned when she heard this, but looking at his expression, she had a hunch that the food seller might be someone from the dark side. She took out her wallet from her clothes, handed it to her husband and said, "Husband, be careful." I'll be right back," Li Chenmo assured her and then walked into another alley. Lu Jiu stood there waiting for him anxiously. On the other side, Li Chenmo knocked on the door rhythmically. Not long after, a man with a long scar on his face opened the door and his eyes lit up when he saw him. "Captain," the man exclaimed in a low voice, full of excitement. Li Chenmo put his finger on his lips and said in a low voice, "Let's go in first." The man nodded and quickly let him in. The two came to a room and entered a dim corridor from a door after he locked the door. After walking for a while, they came to a large basement. The room was filled with grain, flour, dried meat, and several large boxes. Several people in the room were busy weighing grain. They stopped working and turned around when they heard a series of footsteps. When they saw Lee Chenmo, they all said in unison, "Captain." Lee Chenmo smiled when he saw them. He nodded at them and asked, "How is everyone?" "Captain, why are you here in person?" asked a one-armed young man. "I'm here to buy some food," Lee Chenmo said with a slight smile. "Captain, you don't have to pay us, just take whatever you want," another man in a wheelchair said with a grin. "No, just give me the same price as usual. My wife gave me a lot of money and coupons to buy grains." Lee Chenmo took out his wallet and said proudly. "Captain, why didn't you bring our sister-in-law with you?" asked the man with scars on his face. "I will introduce my wife to everyone later. Okay, here is the list of items. Help me prepare for it and don't give me a discount. Your sister-in-law is still waiting for me, so I can't stay for too long," Lee Chenmo said, handing a piece of paper to the man with a scar. After getting the list, they prepared the food and helped him move it out of the basement warehouse. Lee Chenmo paid the market price and said, "There is turmoil in the capital. You have to be careful what you do business and don't get caught." "Captain, we understand. If you need help, you can come to me in Zai Village," Lee Chenmo added. After a brief conversation, he left with the man with a scar on his face. Both men were carrying several sacks on their backs. When Lee Chenmo returned to the corner of the dark alley, he saw his wife stretching her neck and waiting anxiously. The moment Lu Jiu saw her husband coming back, a smile appeared on her face. She walked over and said, "Husband." Before she finished speaking, she found a man with deep scars on his face standing behind her husband, looking at her with interest. Although he looked scary, Lu Jiu did not feel that this man had any malicious intent, so she nodded and smiled at him. Seeing her amiable attitude towards him, the man was stunned for a moment. When he came to his senses, he looked at his captain with admiration. His captain has really good eyes for a wife. Her attitude towards him alone proved that she was a good person. Normally, people would feel fearful or wary of him when they see the scars on his face. Before they knew his character, they already decided he was a bad guy. His captain's wife was able to smile kindly in front of his scary face. She had the courage and a kind heart. He put the sacks on the ground and said, "Captain, I'll take my leave now. If you need anything, come to us." Thank you," Lee Chenmo nodded at him. Lu Jiu was stunned for a moment when she heard the man call her husband captain. Only people in the military would address Lee Chenmo by his military rank. She looked at her husband questioningly. "I'll tell you later, let's go back first," Lee Chenmo whispered. Lu Jiu nodded, collected all the grains into her space, and then entered her space with her husband. After changing their clothes, they leave her space with their bicycle. The two left the black market on a bicycle and returned to Zai Village. When they got home, it was almost dawn. Thinking of her husband who was going to work in less than an hour, Lu Jiu took him to her space and let him sleep. Lee Chenmo didn't refuse, took a hot bath and went to bed. Lying on the soft bed, accompanied by the comfortable temperature, it didn't take long for him to fall asleep. Seeing that her husband was asleep, Lu Jiu went to sort out the food they had just bought. When she went to open the sacks, she saw a small piece of paper in one of the sacks. She checked the grains with the list. There were 2 sacks of coarse grains, a sack of white flour, a sack of white rice, a small sack of sugar, and 2 packets of salt. They lacked 20 kilograms of meat, 2 bottles of sesame oil, 10 liters of cooking oil, and 50 eggs. Since meat and oil are both rare, Lee Chenmo's acquaintances didn't have them. Because the consumption of these ingredients was not large, Lu Jiu used the ingredients from her own space and put them together with the grains. After preparing Li Chengxun's things, she went to prepare breakfast. Since she will stay in her space for a long time, after she finished making breakfast, she started making dim sum. She can make a total of 49 types of dim sum, but of the 49 types, most people only know about 40 of them. She made tofu skin rolls, custard buns, taro cakes, carrot cakes, spring rolls, steamed chicken feet, xyrilongbao, shrimp dumplings, siumai, and bean curd. After making her dim sum, she went outside and sat on a cushion on the veranda. From time to time, a breeze blew as she peeled cashew nuts. As for the cashew apples, she will use them to make juices, wines, and jams. 8 hours later, Lee Chenmo woke up and sat in bed in a daze. After a while, he remembered that he was in his wife's space. He went to the bathroom to wash his face and brush his teeth. After that, he went out to find his wife. Hearing footsteps coming from the bedroom, Lu Jiu cleaned up the veranda and walked in. Seeing her husband in high spirits, she walked over to him with a smile and kissed him. "Let's go have breakfast first," she said with a smile. "MHMM." Li Chenmo looked at the food on the table and said, "Wife, why did you make so much?" "I have nothing to do, so I made more. We can save it for later," Lu Jiu said, handing him a bowl of chicken porridge. Li Chenmo nodded and took a sip of porridge. His stomach was warmed by the porridge, and his appetite gradually increased. While Lu Jiu was eating, she was observing her husband and paying attention to what kind of dim sums he liked to eat. At first she thought her husband liked fried food, but as he ate, she discovered that her husband ate everything. When they finished their breakfast, all the food on the table was eaten. Lu Jiu cleared the table while Li Chenmo washed the dishes. When they left the space, it was already 3:30 in the morning. Li Chenmo took the pig feed and went to the pig pen to feed the piglets and clean up the pig manure. Lu Jiu filled the thermos with warm water and put it into the bamboo basket along with snacks and towels. When the rooster crows, Li Chenmo comes back from the pig pen. After washing his face and hands, he went to get his straw hat. As the sun rose, he kissed his wife and left the house. When Li Chenmo reached the intersection, he saw Li Chengshuan walking over. As soon as Li Chengshuan saw him, he said, "Third brother, I'm here to get the food." Li Chenmo glanced at his second brother and said, "Come with me." When they walked back to Li Chenmo's house, they met Ling Yun on the road. Seeing the two people approaching, Ling Yun raised his eyebrows. If they didn't stand together, he wouldn't see anything wrong with them. But looking at Li Chenmo and Li Chengshuan walking side by side, Ling Yun found it hard to believe that they were actually biological brothers. "Are you going to pick up Pan Magia?" Li Chenmo asked when he saw the bamboo basket in Ling Yun's hand. "Yeah, aren't you going today?" Ling Yun asked. "I will go later." After a brief conversation, they parted ways. Li Chengshuan turned his head and looked at Ling Yun's back coldly. The more he looked at him, the more hateful he thought he was. He turned to look at Li Chenmo and asked, "Do you know each other?" Li Chenmo glanced at his second brother and said, "MHMM." Li Chengshuan was a little unhappy with his perfunctory attitude, but he held it back when he recalled his intention to come. When they arrived at the house, Li Chengshuan thought that since the door was locked, Li Chenmo would be angry. But instead of knocking on the door, he took out a set of keys and opened the door. Entering the front yard, Li Chengshuan saw Lu Jiu bending over to water the vegetable garden. Looking at her graceful figure, a glint flashed in his eyes. Before he could see her figure clearly, his gaze was blocked by Li Chenmo's body. When he raised his eyes, he met the cold eyes of his third brother. Li Chenmo gave him a warning look, and when he looked back, he found his wife looking at him with a questioning gaze. He walked to his wife, stood in front of her and said, "Wife, my second brother is here to get food." Lu Jiu nodded and said, "I'll go to the kitchen to prepare the food." "All right." When she went to the kitchen, Li Chenmo said to Li Chengshuan, "Second brother, just wait here, I'll get the food." After saying that, without waiting for Li Chengshuan's reaction, he walked to the kitchen. Li Chengshuan stood alone in the front yard, looking at the vegetable garden and the blooming peach tree in surprise. It is normal for villagers to grow vegetables in their own yards, but it usually takes until early summer for the vegetables to sprout. Looking at the green buds growing in the yard, he was filled with jealousy. Lu Jiu is not only a young and beautiful girl with an attractive figure, but also has excellent cooking skills and can also do farm work. If his father had agreed to his request and let him marry her, he would not have fallen into his current situation. All this happened because his father favored his third brother and chose to support his third brother's feelings. It's all Li Chenmo's fault. Thinking of his old and sick wife in the county hospital, Li Chengshuan regretted marrying Zhao Siyu because of his jealousy when he saw Zhao Siyu confessing to Li Chenmo before. He wants to steal the woman and prove that he is better than his third brother. As a result, instead of getting a beautiful girl, he got a sick woman. 5 minutes later, Li Chenmo walked out carrying a huge bamboo basket. He placed the bamboo basket in front of Li Chengshuan and said, "This is the food you want. I have already prepared everything, so you don't need to come here again." Li Chengshuan checked the food in the bamboo basket and said, "I will return it to you in 2 months." Li Chenmo just looked at him with raised eyebrows and said nothing. Li Chengshuan saw that his third brother was carrying the basket easily and thought it was very light. But when he tried to lift the bamboo basket up, his face turned red, but the bamboo basket remained motionless. Seeing that he was struggling, Li Chenmo lifted the bamboo basket and put it on Li Chengshuan's back. The moment the bamboo basket was slung on his back, Li Chengshuan groaned. If Li Chenmo hadn't held the bamboo basket, he would have fallen to the ground. Li Chengxuan glared at Li Chenmo and walked away unsteadily. Seeing his embarrassed look, Li Chenmo shook his head, thinking that his second brother was too weak. He couldn't even lift the bamboo basket. Seeing that it was getting bright, he quickly went to the kitchen to get his water and snacks and went to work. Not long after he left, Lu Jiu came out from the kitchen and locked the door. Her husband didn't let her come out just now. Although she didn't know why her husband was in a bad mood whenever his second brother looked at her, she didn't like the way Li Chengxuan looked at her. So when her husband asked her to stay in the kitchen until he sent Li Chengxuan away, she agreed. When she was alone, she continued to water the vegetable garden and peach tree. Then she took out the clothes hanger her husband had made from the woodshed and placed it in the backyard. She took out the winter clothes she had washed before from her space and hung them in the sun to dry. After hanging the clothes, Lu Jiu went to sweep the yard and clean the house. She was busy working, and 3 hours passed in the blink of an eye. In the county town, after Li Chengxuan came back from Zai village, he went to the room he rented and put all the food in the cabinet. He scooped out a bowl of coarse grains and used it to make porridge. When the porridge was cooked, he cut a few thin slices of meat, minced it, and put it into the porridge. He put the remaining meat in the cabinet and locked it. Since the meat is cured with salt, it can be stored for a long time as long as it doesn't get wet. With the cured meat added to the porridge, he wouldn't have to add any salt. The porridge was cooked until it was soft. He scooped a bowl of thick porridge from the pot, poured water into the pot and cooked for a while. When the porridge was boiling, he turned off the stove and poured the thin porridge into the jar. He finished eating the thick porridge, locked the door and left home with a jar of porridge. When he arrived at the hospital, he was startled to see his father-in-law sleeping in a chair next to the bed. Entering the ward, he looked around and didn't see Mother Zhao. As soon as he put the jar on the table, Father Zhao was woken up by the sound. He looked at Li Chengxuan and the bright sunshine outside and asked with a frown, "Why are you only coming here now?" "Father, I went back to Zai village to get food. I cooked some meat porridge before I came here. Will my mother-in-law be here today?" Although Li Chengxuan was a little dissatisfied with Father Zhao's attitude, he still asked politely. "I will go back and tell her to come. You should take good care of your wife while you are here. The nurse said we need to rub her body and move her occasionally so that there will be no rash on her back," Father Zhao said as he stood up and rubbed his tired eyes. Hearing that Father Zhao was going back to call Mother Zhao, Li Chengxuan nodded and said, "I understand, Father." Father Zhao glanced at his daughter again, then left the ward before he returned home. Li Chengxuan, on the other hand, was sitting on the chair beside the bed, showing no intention of wiping his wife's body or taking care of her. Soon after, Professor Zhang walked into the ward followed by several doctors and nurses. Seeing Li Chengxuan, he walked over and asked, "Comrade Li, have you discussed your wife's treatment plan with your family?" Seeing them entering the ward, Li Chengxuan stood up. Hearing Professor Zhang's question, he lowered his head, looking like a desperate husband. His shoulders shook several times before he raised his hand to wipe his tears. The young doctors and nurses felt pity for him when they saw him. After taking a few deep breaths, he raised his head and looked at Professor Zhang with despair. He opened his mouth several times before finally saying hoarsely, "Doctor, can you save my wife? I promise that I will pay for the treatment and hospitalization fees. Just give me a month, no, give me 2 weeks, I promise to pay you." Professor Zhang frowned after hearing what he said. Although he sympathized with the patient's family, he could not agree to his request, because Zhao Siyu not only needs surgery, but also needs expensive treatment. Judging from their family's situation, it is impossible to raise 10,000 yuan for surgery and treatment fees. Professor Zhang thought for a long time and said, "I'm sorry, I can't meet your request, but I can give you a letter of recommendation for the government donation program. Although it only reimburses 50% of the cost, it is enough for your wife's surgery." Li Chengxuan was stunned by his words, not because Zhao Siyu had a chance to survive, but because of how much money he could get from the government. He asked Professor Zhang's students and learned that Zhao Siyu's surgery and treatment cost at least 10,000 yuan, 50% of the total cost, equivalent to 5,000 yuan, which is a sum of money he has never seen in his entire life. When Professor Zhang saw him looking at him without speaking, he thought he was frustrated because the money was far from enough. But before he could persuade him, Li Chengxuan said, "Doctor, please give me the recommendation letter. Even if it is only 50% of the total cost, as long as it can extend my wife's life, I'm very grateful." Professor Zhang nodded and said, "But you need to go to the capital by yourself in order to get the donation. It might take several days of travel." "It's not a problem," Li Chengxuan agreed readily. His supervisor gave him a total of 5 days off. He can apply for a few more days of leave and go to the capital. As long as he can get money, he doesn't mind if the factory reduces his salary. Seeing how eager he was, Professor Zhang thought that after facing a desperate situation, Li Chengxuan was very excited because he finally saw the light of hope. Therefore, he felt that Li Chengxuan and Zhao Xiyu were a loving couple and were more sympathetic to him. Soon after Professor Zhang left with the doctors and nurses, Mother Zhao walked into the ward. As soon as she saw Li Chengxuan, her face darkened and she asked, "Did you bring me a meal?" "Mother, I cooked meat porridge today. I may not be able to come for several days. I will give you the ingredients later. Do you think it's okay?" Li Chengxuan asked. Because of the donation, he was in a good mood and didn't mind Mother Zhao's attitude. After hearing his words, Mother Zhao squinted her eyes and thought for a while. Although it may be troublesome to cook by herself, it is better to get the ingredients since she can save it for later. Thinking that she can ask for more ingredients at the same time, Mother Zhao considered the pros and cons and said, "Okay, but you'd better not lie to me, and don't try to give me fewer ingredients." Li Chengxuan nodded and said, "Then I'm going to get the food. Mother, please help Xiyu wipe her body. The doctor said we need to move her from time to prevent a rash on her back." Mother Zhao found Li Chengxuan annoying, so she waved her hand impatiently and said, I know, you go get the food." Li Chengxuan's eyes turned cold because of Mother Zhao's rudeness, but he still held it back and said, "Then I'll take my leave first, Mother." Mother Zhao went to get the porridge without even looking at him. Li Chengxuan clenched his fists and left angrily. After leaving the ward, he did not go back to the rental house but went to find Professor Zhang. After getting the recommendation letter, he went to get the food. He calculated how much food was needed for each meal and gave Mother Zhao 3 kilograms of coarse grains, 5 eggs, and a catty of meat. This is enough food for 6 to 7 days. Although Mother Zhao wanted more, Li Chengxuan refused, saying that the food was given by his family and he had no money or food and couldn't give more even if he wanted to. In the end, Mother Zhao could only accept the ingredients with a dark face. After settling the meal problem with Mother Zhao, Li Chengxuan packed his clothes, took all of his money, and bought a train ticket to the capital. It takes him 2 days to get from the county town to the capital. So after notifying his superiors, he boarded the train and headed to the capital. Not knowing that Li Chengxuan went to the capital city, Father Li was still thinking about where to get money to treat Zhao Xiyu's illness. Although his mind was wandering, Father Li was very efficient at work. He had completed almost half of the work before noon. Seeing his healthy complexion and strong body, the villagers couldn't help but suspect that Father Li was really in his 50s. His original white hair even gradually turned black, making him look at least 10 years younger. Father Li was known as one of the most handsome men in the village when he was young, and Mother Li was the village's beauty, so their children were handsome and charming. Even in his later years, Father Li still makes many middle-aged women blush with his good figure and handsome face. Therefore, when the villagers saw Father Li and his wife bringing back their second son from the hospital, they were surprised because the second son's appearance was so ordinary. Among the entire Li family, Li Chengxuan stood out because of his ordinary appearance and short stature. Although the Li family never said or treated him differently, Li Chengxuan always had a sense of inferiority, which caused him to be jealous of his brothers since he was a child. Seeing Father Li stop working and rest for a while, a villager asked, "Old Li, what did you eat to make you look younger than before? If you have good supplements, share them with me." This villager can be regarded as a childhood playmate of Father Li. When they were young, they often played in the mud together. So Father Li listened to his words and smiled with a laugh. "What are you talking about? I am almost 60 years old and already an old man. What looks younger? Come on, stop trying to keep your secrets and share them with me. My wife has been complaining about my performance lately. If you have a good supplement, be sure to let me try it. Otherwise, I might get kicked out by my wife." When everyone heard what he said, they burst into laughter. His wife's face turned red and she scolded, "You old thing. Stop talking nonsense. Who is complaining about you?" After hearing what his wife said, the villager asked, "So as to say you are satisfied with me? In that case, I don't have to sleep on the floor tonight. That's great." His wife got embarrassed and said angrily, "Keep talking and see how I sort you out." After receiving a glare from his wife, the villager could only shut up and work honestly. Seeing them arguing, Father Li shook his head. He walked over to the tree and picked up his water bottle. He drank half of the water in several gulps before stopping. Although everyone said he looked younger and healthy, in fact, his health was not as good as before. Due to years of famine and heavy work, he suffered from many diseases. Even now that the weather is getting warmer, he still sometimes experiences rheumatism. After drinking the water, Father Li continued to plow the land. Recently, he can fall asleep better and feel no pain in his body. He wanted to know when it all started. At work, he recalled that his insomnia symptoms had improved since his third daughter-in-law brought him water and snacks every day. He had asked his third son before, and Li Chenmo said it was because Lu Jiu would add some wild ginseng essence when cooking. Although the amount is small and the taste is hard to detect, the health benefits are there. When he asked where the wild ginseng came from, the third son said that Lu Jiu found it when she went to the back mountain to collect firewood. He didn't expect that the third daughter-in-law would be so lucky to find wild ginseng. Since it was a very valuable thing, Father Li didn't want to ask too many questions, so as not to cause trouble to the couple. Because of this incident, Father Li finally got used to the fact that the food cooked by his third daughter-in-law was good for his health. It is also because he often found some medicinal materials in the food she made. At the same time, Lu Jiu was in her space, checking the pig feed produced by her space. Because of the pig feed she made, the piglet grew up a lot. When she went to check on the pigs just now, the previous piglets had grown several times, each weighing more than 20 kilograms. With their current weight, they can finally eat pig feed produced in space. Since the pig feed can be produced by the factory in her space, Lu Jiu now saves more energy in cooking the pig feed herself. With more free time, she began to review high school textbooks in her own space. As a college graduate, she still has tutor qualifications. While reading the textbook, she wrote down the key points and her own understanding. According to her understanding, in addition to Chinese, mathematics, and foreign languages, science courses also need to test physics, chemistry, and biology. As for liberal arts, they will take exams on history, political science, and geography. But this was how she took the college entrance examination in her previous life. As for the subjects of the college entrance examination in 1977, she had no idea. She also didn't know what major her husband would choose, so she made a summary of each subject. As for herself, she is still more interested in science compared to liberal arts. At the time of the exam, Li Chenmo was about 27 years old, which was pretty good. According to history, the youngest participant was in his teens and the oldest was in his late 30s. Thinking of the swarming of girls around her husband, Lu Jiu suddenly hesitated. Her original plan was to do business while her husband attended the university, but thinking about those women in college, she could imagine how they would pursue her husband. Maybe she should discuss it with her husband first. After she finished reviewing a few chapters of the textbook, Lu Jiu put down the pen and massaged her stiff shoulders. She stretched her sore body, let out a long sigh, and went to prepare lunch. Considering her family and the Li family's health, she decided to make more herbal chicken soup today and give some to them. After making up her mind, she used 2 whole chickens and added red dates, wolfberry, angelica root, codonopsis root, astragalus root, chuangsheng root, and 300-year-old wild ginseng to make chicken soup. She also put some yam and shiitake mushrooms in the soup. She uses a large pot and boils all the ingredients with 6 liters of water. After the water boiled, she turned down the heat and let it simmer for an hour. While waiting for the chicken soup, she made mapo tofu, steamed buns, spring rolls, and vegetable salad. For an afternoon snack, she prepared beef empanadas and soy milk. By the time she finished cooking the dishes, the chicken soup was ready. After turning off the stove, she took the chicken out, shredded it, put it back into the soup, and discarded the bones. This way they will be easier to eat. She filled 13 bamboo tubes with chicken soup, 2 for her and her husband, 2 for Pan Meijian and Ling Yun, and the rest will be given to the Li family and the Lu family, including Song Hai. Then she wrapped the empanadas into 5 pieces of oil paper and gave them to her husband Pan Meijian, Song Hai, her parents, and her brothers. They could later share it with her husband's family. After she finished packing the food and filling the kettles with water, Lu Jiu left her space. After locking the door, she left on her bicycle. As usual, she first visited Pan Meijian in the central area. When she reached the field, she looked around and saw her friend pushing a cart filled with several large barrels. Although the temperature was not hot today, her clothes were soaked with sweat. Seeing her struggling to push the cart, Lu Jiu stopped the bicycle and wanted to go over and help her. But as soon as she parked her bicycle on the side of the road, she saw Ling Yun walking towards Pan Meijian. Walking to her side, he took the cart and easily pushed it to the field. She saw Pan Meijian standing there motionless, staring blankly at Ling Yun's back. Lu Jiu smiled, not wanting to disturb their work. So she rode her bicycle to the rest area and took out 2 bamboo tubes, 4 steamed buns, and a parcel wrapped in oil paper from the bamboo basket. Finding Pan Meijian's bamboo basket, she put the chicken soup and food in it. After filling up Pan Meijian's water bottle, she went to find her brothers. As soon as she left, Pan Meijian turned around and saw her leaving. She looked at the tree and saw that her bamboo basket had been moved. It seems that Lu Jiu brought her water again. Thinking of the food and water she had received from Lu Jiu in the past few days, Pan Magia decided to go to the mountain to pick some mushrooms and give them to Lu Jiu. She had found a good spot near the foothills. There are many mushrooms growing there, and they grow very fast. She can pick mushrooms every 2 or 3 days. Although the location is close to the foothills, it is difficult to find. She could only find it because she slipped and fell before. Fortunately, the slope was not high and she only bruised her palms when she fell. That's where she found the Ganoderma lucidum. After making the decision, Pan Magia continued to work. After Lu Jiu delivered water, chicken soup and snacks to her parents and brothers, an alarm sounded through the megaphone. When she arrived in the north area, her husband was waiting for her. Seeing him wiping his sweat while sitting under the tree, she parked her bicycle by the tree and asked, "Husband, have you been waiting for a long time?" "I just finished my work," Li Chenmo said while helping his wife untie the bamboo basket. After they covered the ground with a piece of cloth, Lu Jiu handed the chicken soup to Li Chenmo and said, "Husband, I made herbal chicken soup today. Drink it first." Li Chenmo raised his eyebrows when he heard her words. Thinking of what happened yesterday, he looked at his wife with a smile in his eyes. His wife is probably still jealous about that matter. That's why she is making chicken soup today. Not knowing that her husband thought she wanted to use chicken soup to beat Suanna's fish soup, Lu Jiu handed her husband a pair of chopsticks and said, "For snacks this afternoon, I made some beef empanadas and soy milk. You have worked hard these days, so you should eat more." MHMM, Li Chenmo raised the corner of his mouth and nodded. He looked at his wife and thought that she was cute even when she was jealous. Lu Jiu was drinking chicken soup and found her husband looking at her with knowing eyes, feeling puzzled. She took a bite of her steamed bun and thought, does he like herbal chicken soup so much? She curiously took a sip of the chicken soup and found that it tasted the same as usual. The more she thought about it, the more confused she became. Finally, she stopped guessing and started eating with peace of mind. If her husband likes chicken soup, she will make more. In the East area, Father Li was having lunch with Father Lu and Mother Lu. As in-laws, it is normal to eat together. What's more, the Li family and the Lu family have been friends for generations. When the villagers saw that they were eating coarse grain pancakes, one of them said, "Everyone says that old Li's third son is the most filial, but look at what he is eating and compare with what his third son is eating." The people sitting next to him turned to look in the direction of Father Li and said, "Isn't it normal for him to eat coarse grain pancakes?" It's indeed normal, but when the son eats white flour steamed buns, how can the father eat coarse grain pancakes? He raised his son in vain. The villager shook his head and said, there was a hint of gloating in his voice, but no one cared. "I think it doesn't matter whether his son eats white steamed buns or not. It has nothing to do with him. After all, they have separated their household registrations. At that time, he didn't even give his third son money, while his third son still needed to give him money every month. So if his third son treats him like this now, it's understandable," a middle-aged woman said. Although he didn't receive any money during the separation, before the wedding, he got a courtyard house on the top of the hill. He just didn't care about his father. I said Li Chenmo went too far. As a son, he still has to take care of his parents even after they separate the household, another woman said. "That's right, old Li is so pitiful. His eldest son is too honest and gives all his money and food to his wife, so he can't give old Li more money or food even if he wants to. His third son is also the same as his eldest son. As for his second son, it's best not to come back. He had a big quarrel with old Li when he came yesterday," an old man sighed. He lived next door to Father Li's house, and he heard clearly when Li Chengshuan quarreled with Father Li. Every word Li Chengshuan said was sharp and full of blame. He actually admired Father Li's patience with his second son. If Li Chengshuan was his son, he would have disowned him long ago. Speaking of old Li's second son, I heard that he had an affair with a married woman in the town and was caught by the woman's husband. In order not to go to jail, he gave the woman's husband 300 yuan even after he was beaten until he got a bruised nose and a swollen face. A woman whispered. "That's old news. My cousin who works in the same factory as Li Chengshuan said that no one knew he was married and thought Zhao Siyu was his sister, not his wife. He was pursuing the factory manager's daughter, and it seemed that he might be able to get the girl," a man said casually while eating. "Is what you said true?" The villagers were surprised by the news. "This should be true. When I went to visit my cousin, I saw him several times with a beautiful young girl," the man said after a while. The villagers looked at each other in disbelief. If Li Chengshuan had at least half the looks and figures of his brothers, It would be understandable that he was able to pursue a young and beautiful rich girl, but with his appearance and figure, they didn't know how he did it. In this regard, they must admit that Li Chengxun does have the ability to coax girls better than his brothers. After getting the freshest gossip, everyone quickly finished their lunch and took a nap. They will share this gossip with their families after they get back from work today. After the lunch break ended, Lu Jiu packed the 3-layered bamboo basket and asked, "Husband, what would you like for dinner?" Li Chenmo secured the bamboo basket to the bicycle's back seat and replied after a moment of thought, "Wife, the roasted chicken you made last time was delicious." Hearing her husband's choice, Lu Jiu smiled and said, "Then, let's have roast chicken for dinner." "All right, ride slowly and be careful on the road," Li Chenmo said while patting her head gently. "You should also take care while working," she responded. After holding her husband's hand for a moment, Lu Jiu mounted her bicycle and headed home. As she rode past the central area, she noticed a man walking out of the production team's office. Their eyes met briefly, and although he seemed familiar, Lu Jiu didn't stop to inquire further and continued on her way. Upon seeing Lu Jiu, the man's heart skipped a beat, and he muttered in surprise, "What a beautiful girl." Shortly after, Han Yuheng approached and asked, "Comrade Zyro, why are you standing here lost in thought? Did you see someone you know?" "Comrade Han, do you know a girl who owns a bicycle?" the man inquired. Han Yuheng pondered for a moment and replied, "There is only an educated youth who owns a bicycle, but it's not a girl." The man glanced at Pan Magia, who was working in the field, his expression filled with complexity as he said, "That girl isn't an educated youth." "Not an educated youth, then she must be the Li family's third daughter-in-law," Han Yuheng concluded after some time. "Daughter-in-law, you mean she is married?" the man asked in surprise. She appeared to be so young, how could she already be married? Despite his disbelief, Han Yuheng nodded and confirmed, "Yes, she got married to the Li family's third son last year. It's been almost a month now." Hearing this news, the man felt a pang of disappointment. It was a shame for such a beautiful girl to marry a villager. If only he had met her earlier. His disappointment lasted only for a few seconds before he composed himself and said, "Comrade Han, can you take me to my sister now?" Given the benefits he had received from the man, Han Yuheng couldn't refuse his request. He nodded and replied, "Sure, this way please." Guided by Han Yuheng, they reached the Yang family's house in 15 minutes. Standing outside the gate, Han Yuheng knocked while calling out, "Is anyone home?" Aware that Mother Yang was working in the field, Han Yuheng assumed either Yang Lichao or Zyro Yiking would be the one who opened the door. Shortly after, they heard the sound of a door slamming, followed by a man's hoarse voice. "Who is it?" Yang Lichao asked, his voice laced with clear annoyance. The moment the door opened, both Han Yuheng and Zyro Yiguan were taken aback by the sight of Yang Lichao's disheveled appearance. Upon recognizing Han Yuheng, Yang Lichao suppressed his anger, trying to appear composed as he tidied his clothes. "Team leader, what brings you to my house today?" he inquired as his voice was laced with doubts. From his appearance, Han Yuheng could guess what Yang Lichao was doing just now. When he saw Zyro Yiguan narrow his eyes while exuding a cold and ominous aura, he felt a chill go down his spine. "Comrade Yang, is Zyro Yiking at home?" Han Yuheng asked despite knowing the answer. Hearing that they came here to look for his wife, Yang Lichao glanced at Zyro Yiguan defensively and asked with displeasure, "Why are you looking for my wife?" Zyro Yiguan's eyes glinted with a murderous intent, and a seething anger barely contained beneath his calm surface. His words dripped with disdain as he asked coldly, "Who is your wife? Did you even obtain permission from the Zyro family to marry Kinking?" As Yang Lichao processed Zyro Yiguan's words, realization washed over him, and his expression shifted from confusion to recognition. He understood that this man standing before him must be Zyro Yiking's elder brother as he saw the resemblance between the two. In that instant, his anger dissipated, replaced by a desperate eagerness to please the man. Noticing the quality of Zyro Yiguan's military coat and his clothes, greed flashed in Yang Lichao's eyes. He hurriedly stepped aside, opening the door widely. A smile plastered on his face as he said, "So, it's my brother-in-law, please come inside." Despite his urge to beat Yang Lichao into a pulp, Zyro Yiguan suppressed his anger when he heard Yang Lichao call him brother-in-law, keeping his focus on finding his younger sister. He walked past Yang Lichao, entering the house without hesitation. Disregarding Han Yuheng, who trailed behind him, Zyro Yiguan pushed open the bedroom door. His eyes turned cold and he clenched his fists tightly as he took in the sight before him. "Warning, violence act. Please skip it if you are uncomfortable with the scene. There he saw Zyro Yiking's bare body, covered in cuts and bruises, and some wounds were still oozing blood. Her hair was disheveled and she looked fragile as she curled up on the Kang bed. Without a moment's hesitation, he took off his military coat and wrapped it around her naked body to protect her modesty. However, upon feeling his touch, Zyro Yiking retreated back, struggling to free herself from his embrace. Her eyes were filled with fear, hatred, and disgust as she looked at him like a madman. "Don't touch me, you bastard! I'll kill you," she screamed, her voice filled with anguish and rage. Zyro Yiguan was taken aback by his sister's sudden outburst and was hit on his nose and eyes with her fist. Despite the piercing pain he felt in his heart, he hugged his sister tighter and said, "King, it's me. Brother is here, don't be afraid." "No, let me go," she continued to scream as her struggles intensified. Seeing his sister's condition, Zyro Yiguan's eyes reddened with anger. He let go of his sister and rushed toward Yang Lichao. Before Han Yuheng and Yang Lichao could grasp the situation, Zyro Yiguan's punch already hit Yang Lichao's nose. Crack! The sound of bones breaking could be clearly heard in the room. Han Yuheng was startled by the sudden situation, but he did not dare to intervene. He quickly left the room and stood outside. He didn't dare to look at what was happening in the room, wishing that he didn't witness anything. While Han Yuheng could leave the room, Yang Lichao didn't have the same luck as him. At this moment, he clutched his broken nose. Pain was cleared in his face and his voice muffled as he shouted, "Ah, brother-in-law, what are you doing?" Warning, violence. Please skip it if you are uncomfortable with the scene. Bastard, who is your brother-in-law? You are worse than a beast. Zyro Yiguan was furious, grabbed Yang Lichao's hair tightly and pulled him up. Before Yang Lichao could react, another powerful punch hit the right side of his ribcage. The impact struck his liver. With Zyro Yiguan's rage-fueled strength, the pain felt by Yang Lichao was doubled. Being left-handed and honed by daily military training, the force behind the blow was overwhelming. Yang Lichao bent his body, gasping for breath as the pain radiated through his entire body. Dizzy and disoriented, Yang Lichao fell to the ground, curling into a ball while clutching his stomach in pain. After a while, he started retching, unable to suppress the torment all over his body. When Han Yuheng witnessed Yang Lichao being beaten, his face turned ashen. He didn't dare to look at Zyro Yiguan at all because in his heart, he actually knew that Zyro Yiking's current state was indirectly caused by his actions. If he had stopped Mother Yang and Yang Lichao that day, today's situation would not have happened. Hearing the beating sound from behind, his heart was filled with guilt and fear. Enveloped in his fury, Zyro Yiguan grabbed Yang Lichao's hair, yanking him up. The next moment, he gripped his shoulder and unleashed a knee kick, targeting the same spot as before. Cough! Yang Lichao spat a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. "Bastard, how dare you lay your hand on my sister? You deserve to die." Zyro Yiguan's voice was full of anger, and he stepped Yang Lichao hard in the groin. "Ah!" Yang Lichao's scream filled the room, resembling the anguished squeal of a slaughtered pig. Ignoring Yang Lichao's screams, Zyro Yiguan showed no mercy and continued to exert pressure, his eyes filled with murderous intent. With a loud sound of broken bones, blood oozed from Yang Lichao's groin. "Ah!" Yang Lichao's screams stopped suddenly, and he fainted from the severe pain. Zyro Yiguan looked at him coldly, and only raised his leg after confirming that Yang Lichao had lost his ability as a man. Turning around, he found his sister staring at the unconscious man with eyes ablaze with madness, hatred, anger, and a twisted sense of satisfaction. A manic laughter erupted from her lips, echoing through the room. "Ha ha ha ha, you are finally dead. Heavens have finally opened their eyes and delivered your retribution." Zyro Yiguan's heart sank at the sight of his sister's deranged expression. He approached her, squatting down in front of her and said, King, let's go home." Zyro Yiking ceased her laughter, her gaze vacant as she looked at him. After a moment she whispered, "Yes, let's go home. I want to go home. My father will help me kill that wretched woman. My brother-in-law, His Highness the Crown Prince, will ensure I get justice. All of them will die. With each word her voice grew more hysterical, punctuated by fits of laughter as tears streamed down her face. Zyro Yiguan observed his sister's maniacal state with a mix of sorrow and worry in his eyes. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he exhaled deeply and turned to Han Yuheng. His voice was laced with urgency as he said, "Comrade Han, please help me find someone trustworthy." Understanding the unspoken request, Han Yuheng nodded with a pale face. He swiftly departed to find the right person for Zyro Yiguan's needs, ensuring that the matter remained discreet and confidential. In the meantime, Zyro Yiguan remained by his sister's side, listening to her delirious ramblings. With a heavy heart, he jotted down the names she mentioned in his mind, vowing to investigate the truth behind her suffering. He narrowed his eyes as he glanced at Yang Lichao coldly. Those responsible for his sister's torture will face consequences, and he will make sure that none of them escape. Not long after, Han Yuheng came back with his wife, their faces full of worry and fear. Seeing Xiao Yiking's appearance and the unconscious Yang Lichao's condition, Bai Lian felt her heart sink. She quickly walked to the bed and brought her to the bathroom. She cleaned Xiao Yiking's body, changed her clothes, and braided her messy hair. During this period of time, Xiao Yiking has been in a passive state, as she is immersed in her own world while muttering some unintelligible words. Bai Lian's hands were shaking as she listened to her mumbling, and her face turned pale. With a heavy heart, Xiao Yiguan took his sister to the entrance of the village, where he parked his car. When the villagers saw the team leader's wife supporting Xiao Yiking, they thought she was unwell. They looked at her with sympathy and then continued working. At the same time, Han Yuheng finds more men to help him. They quickly arranged to send Yang Lichao to the hospital. When the men notice the blood on his pants, their faces contort with fear and shock. Obviously, Yang Lichao has suffered a serious beating, and that part of his body can never be used again. Although those people were curious about Yang Lichao's injury, they did not inquire about it, as they understood the severity of Yang Lichao's action towards Xiao Yiking. Some people had reported Yang Lichao and Mother Yang to the authorities before, but due to the lack of evidence, and the fact that Mother Yang always hid Xiao Yiking every time the officers came to check, the officers only regarded their reports as complaints and ignored them. Now, justice has finally been served, and Yang Lichao is facing retribution for his criminal behavior. When Yang Lichao was taken to the hospital by bullock cart, the villagers who knew what he did to Xiao Yiking couldn't help but feel that karma was catching up with him. Because the injury was urgent, no one thought to notify Mother Yang, leaving her unaware of her son's critical condition. Meanwhile, in the village's central area, Pan Magia took a break from her work. Her eyes widened in surprise as she spotted Xiao Yiguan. Surprised, Pan Magia inadvertently dropped the bamboo water bottle she was holding. Just in the nick of time, Ling Yun, who stood beside her, swiftly caught the falling bottle. "Why are you so careless?" he asked, concern flashed in his eyes. Before Ling Yun could return the water bottle to Pan Magia, he watched in surprise as she walked quickly toward a man wearing a military coat. An inexplicable sense of crisis hit him. Watching her talk with the man, his hand holding the water bottle instinctively tightened. For the first time, he saw a smile he had never seen before on her face, and this smile was not directed at him. Her normally polite demeanor now carried affection toward that man that made him feel sour, bitter, and irritated. Unaware of the turmoil brewing in Ling Yun's heart, Pan Magia looked at Xiao Yiguan with bright eyes and greeted him with a smile. "Brother Yiguan, why are you here?" Xiao Yiguan looked at Pan Magia coldly and asked, "Why can't I be here?" Pan Magia was taken aback by his indifferent attitude. When she saw Xiao Yiking behind him and the bruises on her face, she was even more surprised. She looked at her with worry and asked, "Brother Yiguan, what's wrong with Yiking?" As soon as she asked, Xiao Yiguan became furious and asked her angrily, "Magia, are you seriously asking me this now? Have you forgotten the promise you made to me when you and King left the capital? Is this how you take care of my sister?" Pan Magia was startled by his outburst and took a few steps back. She clenched her fists and said, "I didn't know something like this would happen to Yiking. If I knew, I—" "Enough," Xiao Yiguan interrupted her. "No matter what you say now, it's useless. The damage has been done, and you, her so-called best friend, do nothing to help her. Pan Magia, you really let me down," Xiao Yiguan said coldly with a hint of disappointment. "Brother Yiguan, she said, her voice trembling with guilt and regret. Pan Magia stretched out her hand to pull at his sleeve, but before she touched his clothes, he waved his hand and said coldly, "Don't touch me." Pan Magia was caught off guard and pushed back. She fell backward as she lost her footing. Xiao Yiguan's eyes widened when he saw her falling and instinctively reached out to support her, but before he could hold her hand, someone had already pulled her into his arms. Feeling the strong chest on her back, Pan Magia raised her head and asked dazed, "Brother Ling, why are you here?" Ling Yun looked at her with a dark face and asked her sullenly, "When you were bullied, do you still expect me to stand by and watch?" After he finished speaking, he helped her stand steadily but didn't release his grip on her shoulder. He fixed his gaze on Xiao Yiguan and spoke with a cold, firm tone, "Comrade, I don't care who you are or what your relationship is with Magia, but I won't tolerate anyone mistreating her. Apologize to her or don't blame me for being harsh." Zyro Yiguan was taken aback by the sudden appearance of the man and his intimate gesture towards Pan Magia. Despite being aware of her feelings for him, he had always treated her like a younger sister. However, seeing her standing so closely with another man irritated him, and he felt a surge of bitter taste in his heart. "Who are you?" Zyro Yiguan asked, his brows furrowing in displeasure. "I'm Magia's friend," Ling Yun replied calmly. Before Zyro Yiguan could let out a sigh of relief, Ling Yun added casually, "A very close one." Hearing these provocative words, Zyro Yiguan felt a surge of irritation rises in his heart. Clouded with anger, he turned to Pan Magia and said, "Comrade Pan, I apologize for pushing you and nearly causing you to fall. However, I don't want to see you again. Don't appear in front of me in kinking anymore." Pan Magia was shocked when she heard his words. Their friendship of more than 10 years was unilaterally severed by him. Whether it was Zyro Yiking or Zyro Yiguan, both of them regarded her as an insignificant person. When they already decide that she's at fault, they can easily dismiss her without even bothering to listen to her explanation. Is this the same man she has loved for so many years? She looked at Zyro Yiguan's back and asked, "Brother Yiguan, did you ever consider me a friend?" Hearing her question, Zyro Yiguan halted in his footsteps and replied, "Never." He never treats her as a friend because he regards her as a younger sister. He cared about her even more than he cared about his own sister. When he saw her just now, his heart was filled with happiness and he felt relieved. But when he saw her being hugged by that man, he was furious and suffocated. He wanted her to stay away from that man, but he didn't know what to do. His heart raced with anticipation as he waited for her to coax him as she had done before. Anxiety gnawed at him when he didn't hear her say anything. Expecting her usual sweet demeanor, he was stunned when he heard her unexpected words. Pan Magia's eyes reddened, but she held back her tears and said calmly, "I understand." Hearing her words, Zyro Yiguan turned around instantly, looking at her in disbelief. How could she agree so easily? Avoiding his gaze, Pan Magia lowered her head and said, "Brother Ling, we should get back to work." Ling Yun nodded and glanced back at Zyro Yiguan. Seeing the mix of heartache, confusion, anger, jealousy, regret, and hesitation in Zyro Yiguan's eyes, Ling Yun clenched his fists tightly and walked back to the field with Pan Magia. Zyro Yiguan stood on the road and watched them leave side by side, feeling as if he had lost something very important. Zyro Yiguan had an impulse in his heart to chase after Pan Magia, take back his words, and stop her from leaving with that man, but thinking about his sister's situation, he hesitated. Pan Magia is one of the people who was cursed by her sister. He can no longer treat her the way he used to until he investigates the matter clearly. He couldn't let his sister down anymore. After knowing each other for more than 10 years, Zyro Yiguan found it hard to believe that Pan Magia would hurt his sister. But if she was actually involved in hurting his sister, he wasn't sure what he would do. After controlling his emotions, Zyro Yiguan took a deep breath and said, "Let's go." As they walked away, Pan Magia raised her head and stared at his retreating figure until she couldn't see his back anymore, before lowering her gaze and resuming her work as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Ling Yun observed everything from the side and noticed her feelings for that man. The realization that her feelings might not be one-sided left him feeling uneasy. The villagers observed the situation with curious gazes and their hearts were itching for gossip. But before they could question Pan Magia about the man, Ling Yun's cold gaze made them hesitate. Because of this incident, Ling Yun kept a close watch on Pan Magia. When the siren blared from the megaphone, everyone stopped working and prepared to return home. Although Pan Magia appeared normal, Ling Yun was unhappy because he noticed she had been lost in her thoughts throughout the day. The sour feeling resurfaced in his heart when he considered that she might be thinking about that man. After Pan Magia finished washing the dirt from her hands and feet, she noticed Ling Yun standing in front of her, holding their bamboo baskets. She looked at his furrowed brow and asked, "Brother Ling, what's wrong?" Ling Yun stared at her for a moment before he asked with a hint of heartache in his voice, "Are you all right?" Pan Magia was taken aback by his question for a moment and replied casually with a smile, "I'm fine. Why do you ask?" Ling Yun's frown deepened when he saw her smiling. He glanced around, noticing there weren't many people left, and reached out to hold her hand. Pan Magia was taken aback by his sudden gesture and attempted to pull her hand back, but he tightened his grip and said, "You don't have to smile in front of me. If you want to cry, just cry. I'm here." His words brought tears to her eyes, and she quickly lowered her head, trying to regain her composure. She took several deep breaths and said hoarsely, "I'm sorry." Ling Yun sighed helplessly, squeezed her hands, and said in a low voice, "Why are you sorry? You did nothing wrong. The one who should be sorry is not you but him." This time Pan Magia remained silent and simply nodded. Her tears fell to the ground as she sobbed quietly. Ling Yun felt a pang in his heart seeing her cry. He had always believed his feelings for her were rooted in gratitude. However, witnessing her affectionate gaze toward that man, he realized he was jealous, and his possessiveness toward her was unexpectedly strong. It was only today that he truly understood his own emotions. He gently patted her back and said nothing, standing there with her for more than 30 minutes, enduring mosquito bites. As the sun set and the moon slowly rose, Pan Magia finally stopped crying and said hoarsely, "Thank you." "Are you feeling better?" he asked her gently. "Let's go back," she replied, raising her head and smiling at him. Ling Yun was dazed by her smile. Different from the usual polite and distant smile, this smile is more intimate and a little dependent. When he snapped back to reality, Ling Yun turned his head away, coughed awkwardly, and let out a soft hum. Meanwhile, in the county town's hospital, Zhao Siyu finally opened her eyes after being in a coma for several days. The moment she woke up, the nurse stopped writing the report and approached her. Seeing Zhao Siyu's unfocused eyes, the nurse pressed the button above the bed and asked, "Comrade, can you hear me?" The nurse waited for a moment, but there was no response from Zhao Siyu, and she called out to her again, "Comrade, can you hear me?" This time, Zhao Siyu finally focused her gaze on the nurse and asked weakly, "Where am I?" Her voice was muffled because of the oxygen mask, so the nurse needed to lean closer to hear her words. Seeing Zhao Siyu finally able to respond, the nurse said, "Comrade, you are in the county town's hospital. The doctor will be coming over shortly." Zhao Siyu turned her head but didn't see anyone besides the nurse. She swallowed and asked again, "Where is my family?" Hearing her question, the nurse hesitated and said, "Your mother just went home and will be back tomorrow." Zhao Siyu nodded silently, keeping her thoughts to herself. While she was in a coma, she had heard all their conversations, even though her consciousness was fleeting. She still had the gist of how they treated her. Therefore, she knew her mother and her husband were actually unwilling to take care of her. As for the Li family, she has complicated feelings about them. Not to mention that the family has been separated. Based on the previous attitudes of her and her husband, it is normal for the Li family to ignore her in this situation. Unexpectedly, it was them who tried their best to help her. And her husband, who vowed to treat her well for the rest of his life, hoped that she would die soon. Not long after, Professor Zhang entered the ward, followed by several nurses and 2 young doctors. When Zhao Siyu heard their footsteps, she turned her head and looked at them expressionlessly. Chapter 243, Mother Yang's Outburst, 1. Professor Zhang stood by the bedside, took out his medical flashlight, and used it to check Zhao Siyu's eyes. After a while, he turned off the flashlight, looked at the young doctor and said, "Do the blood test and observe the patient's condition closely." After that, he wrote down something in his notebook and handed the paper to the young doctor while saying, "Give this medicine to the patient once every 12 hours for 48 hours. If there's any change in her condition, inform me immediately." The young doctor took the paper and said, "Yes, Professor." Having given the instructions to his disciple, Professor Zhang turned to Zhao Siyu and said, "Comrade, you should rest for now. I will come again tomorrow." Zhao Siyu nodded and whispered weakly, "Thank you, doctor." Professor Zhang acknowledged her gratitude and left the room with the young doctors and nurse. Only one nurse remained to take her blood and keep watch over her. Due to her physical weakness, Zhao Siyu felt drowsy. But even though she was in excruciating pain while awake, she resisted going to sleep. She was afraid that if she closed her eyes, she might never wake up again. She stared out of the window and saw the moon in the sky. It seemed she had been sleeping for a long time. The moon had changed. The nurse observed her lost in thought and let out a sigh. It was a familiar sight for her to witness patients passed away due to severe illnesses. However, Zhao Siyu's situation struck her as particularly pitiful. At the same time in Zai village, the news that Yang Licha was seriously injured has spread throughout the production team. When Mother Yang came back from the fields, she heard the villagers talking about it. "Are you telling the truth?" one villager asked in horror. "Of course, is this something you can joke about? You didn't see how serious his injuries were. Not to mention his face was swollen and his nose was broken. The injury in his lower body was so severe," a young man said as he opened his eyes wide. Thinking of the blood stains on Yang Licha's pants, he couldn't help but shudder and instinctively covered his lower body with his hands. When the men saw his actions, they immediately understood. Thinking of Yang Licha's condition, they felt chills on their backs and pain in their lower bodies. How much hatred must there be for someone to cripple him in that place? That would be equivalent to severing the bloodline of the Yang family. After hearing their words, Mother Yang felt an ominous premonition in her heart. But in Zai village, there are many registered households with the surname Yang. Therefore, they may be talking about people from her husband's family or even unrelated people. She was a little curious, so she walked up to them and asked with a smile, "This nephew, who are you talking about?" When the villagers saw Mother Yang, they looked at each other with embarrassed expressions. Should they tell her that they are talking about her only son? Mother Yang started to panic when she saw them looking at each other but not daring to look at her or answer her questions. She grabbed the villager's hand and said, "Nephew, tell me, you are not talking about my son, right?" Being held tightly by Mother Yang, the villagers were startled and hesitated. Seeing his hesitation, Mother Yang's ominous premonition became even stronger, and she asked tremblingly, "Could it be? The one you are talking about is my son." Seeing her pale face, the villager could only nod and say, "Aunt Yang, don't get too agitated. Your son has been sent to the county hospital. He should be fine." As soon as Mother Yang heard what he said, her mind went blank, her legs felt weak, and her whole body felt numb. She fell to the ground in a daze, repeating the villager's words in her head. The villagers were frightened when they saw her suddenly collapse. The men were afraid to touch her, so they called the women in the village to come and check on her. Thinking that something bad had happened, the villagers came over and saw Mother Yang sitting on the ground in a daze with a pale face. "Sister-in-law, are you okay? Can you stand up? Don't sit on the ground like this." A middle-aged woman came over and said after confirming that Mother Yang was okay. Hearing her voice, Mother Yang came back to her senses. She grabbed the middle-aged woman's hand tightly and asked in panic, "My son, where is my son?" Mother Yang's nails pierced her skin, and the middle-aged woman frowned in pain. Although she was in pain, she did not push Mother Yang's hand away and said, "Sister-in-law, your son is in the county hospital." This time, Mother Yang could no longer pretend that she heard wrongly. Since everyone knew that her son was admitted to the hospital, why didn't anyone notify her? Her poor son is alone in the hospital, and she knows nothing about it. Without saying a word, she got up from the ground and started running frantically home. Once home, she rushed to the bedroom and took the money purse hidden behind a cupboard. After taking the money, she took away the household registration book and coupons. She packed everything up with a piece of cloth, put it inside her clothes, and left the house in a hurry. The villagers shook their heads when they saw her running towards the county town. No matter how evil Mother Yang is, they still sympathize with her at this moment. As parents, they know how they feel when their children are hurt. Every parent feels heartache when their child is hurt. Mother Yang is already in her early 50s. She almost fainted several times while running all the way to the county seat. When she arrived at the hospital, her face was pale and her clothes were soaked with sweat.